All right, guys, tonight what we're going to be talking about, we're going to kind of continue the conversation that we were having on the ski trip. For those of you who went on the ski trip, who can tell me what the theme was?
Need a lift.
Need a lift. And, you know, it's interesting, yeah, it's a double meaning with the ski lift, and most of us needed a lift about every 50 yards off the snow. But throughout the week, we talked about how we can not only ask God for a lift and how we can, you know, relate to knowing that there's times that we need someone to come and pick us up and to help us, but how we can help others. And tonight what we're going to be talking about is we're going to be talking about how we can share the love of God with others. As Christians, for those of you in here who are Christians, who are believers, our biggest mission is to share the love of God. It is to witness. It is to evangelize, which a lot of people are like, ooh, scary word. It's to evangelize. But how do we go about doing it? We're going to be looking at a story from Luke chapter 24, starting with verse 13. And it's going to be up above me, and feel free to read along in your Bible or make notes, whatever. I got to turn up the brightness on this because it's a little dark. There we go, now I can see it. Okay, so here we go. This is the walk to Emmaus. Follow along with me if you don't mind. That same day, two of Jesus' followers were walking to the village of Emmaus, 7 miles from Jerusalem. As they walked along, they were talking about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things, Jesus himself suddenly came and began walking with them. But God kept them from recognizing him. He asked them, "What are you discussing so intently as you walk along?" They stopped short, and sadness written across their faces. Then one of them, Cleopas, replied, "You must be the only person in Jerusalem who hasn't heard about all the things that had happened there in the past few days." "What things?" Jesus asked. "The things that happened to Jesus, the man from Nazareth," they said. "He was a prophet who did powerful miracles, and he was a mighty teacher in the eyes of God and all the people. But our leading priests and other religious leaders handed him over to be condemned to death, and they crucified him. We had hoped that he was the Messiah who had come to rescue Israel. This all happened 3 days ago. Then some women from our group of his followers were there at his tomb early this morning, and they came back with an amazing report. They said his body was missing, and they had seen angels who told them Jesus is alive. Some of our men ran out to see, and sure enough, his body was gone, just as the women had said." Then Jesus said to them, "You foolish people, you find it so hard to believe that all the prophets wrote in the scriptures? Wasn't it clearly predicted that the Messiah would have suffered all these things before his glory?" Then Jesus took them through the writings of Moses and all the prophets, explaining from all the scriptures the things concerning himself. By this time, they were nearing Emmaus and at the end of their journey. Jesus acted as if he was going on, but they begged him, "Stay the night with us, since it is getting late." So he went home with them, and as they sat down to eat, he took the bread and blessed it. Then he broke it and gave it to them. Suddenly, their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and at that moment he disappeared. They said to each other, "Didn't our hearts burn within us as he talked with us on the road and explained the scriptures to us?" And within the hour, they were on their way back to Jerusalem. They found the 11 disciples and the others who had gathered with them, who said, "He has really risen." He appeared to Peter. Okay, so we got this story. How many of you have ever, and this is just interesting, how many of you have ever done like a group evangelizing thing? Like maybe you were on a trip and like they gave you something to give away, gave you something to hand out, some set of things to say. Anybody ever been on one of those? All right, good. 6 of you. We're doing one next week. No, I'm kidding. When I was a kid, this is one of the things our church did. Okay? We would go out and we would do like park evangelism. We had a very popular park in Blue Ridge where some people would gather, and what we would do, we had several ways we would do it. Probably the most embarrassing way was we did a clown ministry. We dressed up as clowns. We would go into the park, we would do skits, and then we would tell people about Jesus. My clown character's name was Sheriff Dougaley, and I had a really big hat, horrible makeup because I did it myself. I was kind of creepy. If you look back, I was a pudgy little clown with a big hat and a huge star. And I'm not sure how much good I did for Christ as much as I did scaring people and small children. How many of you are scared of clowns, to be honest? Okay, yeah. I didn't help out that stereotype. But what we would do is we had a thing, we would go up and we'd be like, hey, we'd do our skit, and then we'd be like, we'd start off with like, do you know Jesus? Which is an awesome tagline to start a conversation, right? Do you know Jesus? No? Well, let me tell you about him. And then we would tell them about Jesus. And to be honest, not the most productive style. Now, being Christians, loving God, is that we're supposed to be sharing Christ's love. We're supposed to be sharing Him with the world. But how do we do that? Now, Jesus models it right here, and so we're going to step through it. We're going to look at how Jesus models for us to share the love of God. Now, first off, it's important to know that the walk to Emmaus, as it explains, a couple days earlier, in fact, 3 days earlier, Jesus was brutally crucified and killed. They had more followers than just 11. There were a lot of followers of Jesus. Everybody kind of went gone whenever that all went down. And they are sad. Okay? And so they're walking along, and here comes Jesus, okay? Starting in that verse 13. The two followers, they're walking on a 7-mile journey. How many of you have walked 7 miles in one sitting? Right? It's not fun. They did it a lot more than I did, but that part already makes me queasy a little bit. Alright, so they're walking, and then Jesus appeared. Not like appears, He appears. It's like, poof. Here's Jesus. I don't know if it was smoke or not, but there's just boom, and Jesus appears. Okay, this is after His resurrection. He actually does this a lot, and over 500 people see Jesus after He is raised from the dead. Okay, so He pops up behind them, and Jesus notices something. Now, do you think Jesus really need to ask these questions? No? Have you ever asked a question already well knowing the answer from someone?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
You look at someone, Jesus sees these people and they're sad. It's obvious they're sad. They look downtrodden. They look sad. Have you ever went up to someone who obviously is miserable and you gave the question, right? You know the question.
What's wrong?
What's wrong? How are you doing? What's wrong? Is everything okay? Person sobbing. Is everything all right? Sure. No, right? But obviously Jesus knows they're not feeling well. But He sees that they're discussing, and He goes up to him and He asks him a question. He asks him, "What are you discussing so intently as you walk along?" What Jesus does is He appears. He starts walking with them. Okay, I don't know if it would creep you out. I don't know how close it was when Jesus appeared. But, to suddenly hear footsteps behind you, that would kind of freak me out. But Jesus pops up, they're talking, maybe they're talking too intently to know. And Jesus is like, "Hey, what are you talking about?" And He starts walking with them. Guys, for one thing, one way that a lot of us mess up whenever we're trying to share the love of God, whenever we're not quite sure what to do, a lot of times we come in with the knowing of the answer, right? We come in hard. We're like, okay, I don't need to ask you any questions. It's obvious you're feeling horrible. So let me just tell you, Jesus is the answer. Now, Jesus is the answer. Yes. But how many of you have ever felt bad and someone comes up to you and they give you this one, right? They walk in and they're like, "Suck it up. It'll be okay. You're fine." How many of you like hearing that whenever you're obviously distressed? Right? Okay, one of you. Anna, okay, there we go. Everyone be straightforward with Josiah. Just be very straightforward with him. The rest of us, what would we rather do? We would rather we would rather dialogue about it. We would rather sit down, because Jesus realizes He knows the answer to the questions. He already knows what they're talking about. And yet He goes, "Tell me about it. What's going on?" And He's walking with them. If we want to reach out to this world, if we really want to make an effective change for Christ, if we really want to reach people, we have to get off of our butts and we have to walk with them. Not only do we have to walk with them, we have to talk with them. Now, it's very important. Jesus does two things. He says, what are you discussing? And they're like, dude, have you not checked Facebook? Jesus Christ got killed. It's on my Instagram post. It's everywhere. Everyone knows about what happened. I can't believe you don't. And then he's like, okay, what things? Kind of ironic. Jesus is the one that all these things happen to. He's like, what things? But whenever we are walking with people, whenever we're living a life with people, we got to learn to listen to them. And listening, guys, is not waiting for your turn to talk. How many of you are bad about that? You just hear, and it depends on the people, right? You have those moments where you have something really great to say. And maybe you're like me and you lose it. Like if you don't constantly focus on it, and they're talking to you, and you're just kind of like, yeah, yeah. Well, what I got to say is da. We can't be like that whenever we're sharing God's love, whenever we're building into someone's life. You may have friends who have problems and issues, and you go, what? Maybe the issues are dealing with drugs. And you know the answer, right? Stop doing drugs! That's your answer, right? But you can't just sit there and let them stop doing drugs. You got to invest. You got to listen. Yes? Hold on, I'm listening.
God's messaging.
Yes, God's messaging my computer back there. Will you go ahead and mute my computer for the moment? You got it? Thank you. So, we got to listen. Jesus takes the time, he's walking with them, and he's listening to them. So many times when it comes to sharing the love of Christ, we treat it as like a duty, then we do something that we want to do, we want to love. Yes, I said duty. Calm down over there. I see the chuckles. We treat it as, I want to get this over with. Right? I want Jack to think I'm awesome, so I can say, hey, I evangelized, I said hi to someone, I reached out to someone. You can't put it within a timetable like that. You got to invest. You got to listen. You got to wait. And they go through, and they talk, and they tell them what happened. They give the whole story, and these guys are sad. And then after they're done speaking, Jesus says to them this, verse 25. Then Jesus said to them, you foolish people. Now, don't think of this like this, like you foolish people. That's not what Jesus is doing. Okay, Jesus is not like, being like, oh, I can't believe you don't even. He's going, it's like, man, come on, guys, you know the answer to this. You know, as Jesus' followers, that he would have to do this. And then Jesus took them through the Old Testament. Good thing they had 7 miles, right? He took them through the entire Old Testament and pointed out everything that pointed to Christ. Well, you know what? It's interesting. They had 7 miles. Maybe they're walking slow. I don't know. But Jesus is taking everything and is redirecting back to him. And honestly, that's what the Bible is. It is a shining example towards Christ and towards God's love for us. And he walks them all the way through it. See, a lot of us, whenever we want to share God's love, we start with that. We start with the sermon. We're like, okay, you know what? Well, we just met. Let's talk. Okay, I don't want to hear about your life. Hear about this verse. Here's what John 3:16 says. Yada, 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 yada. Not convinced yet? Well, Romans blah, blah, blah says... That's not where we start. But you know what? Jesus gets to that point. Jesus knows what he's talking about. For us, in sharing, we walk along with them. We live life with them. We listen. Okay? We conversate. We get discussions out. And then we are prepared when our time comes to speak to share the love of God. To know what we're talking about. Okay, so then he does that. He gets through that. And who knows how long that sermon was, or that talk was. And then they arrive at their destination. So evidently it was from whenever they met to then. And they get there, and then they're like, they have this awkward moment. You know, guys have kind of an awkward thing of inviting other people over. Girls, you're kind of like, you're like cool with inviting anybody anywhere. You gotta go to the bathroom? Hey, everyone, come on, let's go. Sleep over? Yeah, just stay in my house. It's gonna be awesome. You know, no, you don't talk like that, first off. Okay. But guys, it's a little awkward to be like, hey, Jesus, do you do sleepovers? No? Yeah, it's awkward. That's awkward. Cleopas, you know, he's weird. What a name, by the way. Cleopas. Cleo! So, they're sitting there, they're like, hey, Jesus, you want to spend the night? You want just hang out a little longer. This is what they're telling Jesus. He's pretending to, you know, he pretends like he's going to go. And they're like, no, you got to stay. Come over. I have an Xbox. We'll have fun. All right? And so they get to this awkward moment. They invite him over. And then he sits down with these strangers. He sits down with them for dinner. Have you ever been on an awkward, like, dinner date? Not a, like, actual date, but where you're at someone's house where you don't really know them? You know, well, striking a chord here with some people. There comes that time, you know, there's always that kind of awkwardness whenever you're in someone else's territory. How many of you are the people you'd rather invite someone to come to you than go visit them? Right? You know, because why? Because you're in control when you come to my house. I know exactly what we're going to eat. I know when we're going to eat it. I'm going to know where the bathroom is. I'm going to know where the back bathroom is so I don't have to worry about you know. And I'm going to know all these situations. I have it under control. But what does Jesus do? He goes to their home. He goes to their place of residence. He goes to where they're staying. He sits down at their table. Sometimes that can be awkward at home. Sitting at their table. Now, what does this mean for us? What I'm saying for us is that you need to enter into their world, their being the people you share the love of Christ with. You need to enter into their world. And it's going to be a little uncomfortable. It's going to be out of your control. It's going to be something that, you know what? They may talk about things you're uncomfortable with talking about. You know what? It may be, you may get put in situations that are like, okay, I don't even know what that joke means. You know, you may get put into situations where you're kind of clueless. But you're investing because you are entering into their world. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, hey, you know what you need to do? You need to go to all the super sinful places and go there. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if you want to really invest in someone's life, you got to get in their life. You can't do it from afar. You know, I can tell Teresa I love her. I can call on the phone and tell her I love her. But, you know, if I'm not at the house, you know, helping out with life, then do I really care about her? Probably not. Is she really going to feel the love that I have for her? Probably not. In fact, I dare say no. She's not. And so for us, when we're reaching out, we're going, okay, you know what? I want to share the love of God. It takes investment. It takes you entering into their world. It may mean for you that you are a part of something that you're particularly not super fond of. It may be a club. It may be a sport. It may be playing a board game. It may be reading a book that they like to read. It may be, I don't know, going to see a movie that's really dumb or something. Or really sappy or whatever. We can cover all kinds of movies. All right? There's people looking at people. Don't do that. Don't put people on. It may be any number of things, but Jesus points out here that he's willing to sit down, eat with them, get in their world. I want you to see a video it's just going to play up above me that kind of talks a little bit about this, and then we're going to kind of dive into some examples.
I was at Cafe Brazil almost every night studying. It's open 24 hours a day, and there are a lot of people, and there's free Wi-Fi, so people just come and they hang out. There are all kinds of people there. There are believers there are people that are kind of rough around the edges. I was there literally almost every night, and I would be there for like 4 to 5 hours at a time. I had my laptop with me, and on the back of my laptop, there was an I Am Second sticker. They would constantly ask, what is that? What does that mean? And so I would get opportunities on a daily basis to start sharing about Christ and start sharing how Christ had changed my life. And recently, there's a guy named Russell who I got to share kind of my story with. He very much so like had a very high view of like love and put that on a pedestal and all of that. And I was like, hey, like I used to be there. I was boy crazy. Just jumping from guy to guy to guy to guy. And just, I was absolutely like idolizing this guy that I was with and looking for my significance in him. And so I was putting this man in the place of Christ in my life because I was both kind of asking him to be my savior and to be perfect for me. And then I was also finding my self-worth in what he thought of me. He didn't believe in Christ at all and continued to just make me feel like that couldn't be real. In the next few months, it was me just kind of wrestling with, okay, well, what does that mean for a marriage one day? What does that mean for my life now? And it was really obvious that me and my fiance had totally different expectations as far as what life should be like. And so I ended up getting out of that and looking towards Christ, and that was probably the beginning of my journey. I got to share kind of my story with Russell, and we sat and talked for 3 hours, and he ended up coming to Christ and now is chasing after the Lord, and it's amazing to watch. It's one of the most amazing things I've ever seen, just the way he wants to put Christ first in everything now. I love hanging out with believers because I feel like I get so encouraged by talking to them, but I love hanging out with unbelievers.
She took her environment that she was in, and she used it to invest in those around her. She took the time, a 3-hour conversation with somebody who regularly came in, probably someone who she saw again and again. There are people that you are around that you see on a regular basis that you know you need to share with them. You know they need someone to encourage them. You know that they need Christ in their life. Are you going to wait, or are you going to get up and get active? When I was in middle school, there was a guy on the football team. He was a little short guy. And yes, he was short compared to me, so he was short. And his name was Corey. And Corey was an angry small guy. Okay? He was an angry small guy. He was, he didn't have a lot of friends on the team. I was just getting on the team. And so he was a lineman as well. And so I started to get to know him. And Corey didn't have a lot of friends, mainly because he was a powder keg. I mean, he was like, rah! And generally I'm a kind of a calm guy, so we worked well together. And so I decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to get to know him better. And over throughout the football season, we got to know each other. I invited him to come to church with me, church youth group, because, you know, if worse come to worse, we invite him to church, maybe someone else will do something good. And so I invited him to come. He started coming on a regular basis, and then he started coming. We had sleepovers. He would come over, have a sleepover. I would go over to his house, we'd have a sleepover and things like that. And we really got to know each other. About 3 years in of us being good, close friends and all that, and us sharing church together and life together and stuff like that, he came to know Christ. He thanked me for asking, but what did I do? I didn't lead him through Romans' road to salvation. I didn't guide him through the biblical steps. We talked a lot about God. I helped bring him to church, and I was a friend. I invested. And that's what it is for you. We're talking about people needing a lift. We talk about reaching the world for Christ. Who are you investing in? And if you're not investing in anybody, my question for you is this, is why not? If it's I'm too busy, maybe you're doing too much. If it's my schoolwork is taking over my life, maybe you need to spend a little more time with God. If it's, you know what, I'm a shy person, ask God for strength to do that. Grab another Christian friend and double invest. If you're scared to do it by yourself, more than likely 2 of you will be able to get it done. Or 3 of you. Don't go much higher than that. You freak people out when you walk up in groups of 4, okay? But what I'm saying is, if you're not looking at someone else that you can share, and you may think, man, I got nothing to offer this person. That's wrong. That's absolutely wrong. I want you to take a second. I want you to close your eyes. I want you to think about who's your best friend? Who's a close friend to you? Think about how good they make you feel. Think of how much fun that you have being with them. Think about how much influence they have in your life. What dumb thing they convince you to do, or to get up on stage and sing, or to whatever. Think about the joy that's come to your life through your friend. You can do that for someone else. Open your eyes back up. You can do that. You have that power. I want to encourage you, when you do that though, don't forget about the sharing of God's love. Jesus walked with them. He talked with them. He listened to them. He asked them questions. Okay? He went through all those steps. And when the time was right, man, he shared the knowledge of Christ with them. And the glory and the peace and the wonder and the amazement with it. You got to be prepared for that. You got to work to it, but you got to be prepared for it. So this is what I want. We don't have enough for everyone. Okay, but if you are interested, after we're gonna pray it out. I'm gonna release you a little bit early, but we're gonna pray, and then if you would like to take one of these bracelets as a challenge. Now, if you went on a ski trip, you get second dibs. You got to wait because you already got one. These bracelets basically say need a lift, and they say RHUMC Ski Retreat. I bought a lot of extra, but I feel like it really applies to what we need to do. And on the inside of these, if you didn't know, I forgot, to be honest with you. On the inside of these, it has Isaiah 40:31. And I want you to look that up later. I want you to look that up later and then think about sharing God's love and needing lift and giving that lift to someone else. Will you pray with me?